Welcome and thank you all for joining us today at this session we're providing for you, guiding your school through campus master planning. In a moment, we'll introduce ourselves, but I just wanted to set the stage a little bit for everyone. I'm sure your days are busy and your minds may be elsewhere, so we're just going to try to ground you for a second on what we're actually talking about. Part of this, I think, is just to make sure we all have a shared understanding of campus master planning. So very quickly, just to share with you what we believe this would be. The what is the master plan, the campus master plan, a physical translation of your school's mission, vision, and program. So it really is that physical manifestation of your goals and vision and program, and then how it's represented on your campus. Why to do this is to provide that roadmap for future growth and improvements, to do it in a way that makes sense, so you're not proposing something that may be out of sync with future plans. We recommend revisiting your plans at least every 5 to 10 years, and certainly once you've done a strategic plan is a good time to at least revisit, if not redo, your master plan. And of course, the team members would be a vast number of people from the school and the constituents, as well as your planning team, as well as a program manager, which is part of what we're going to be sharing with you today. And then a little bit about the how, and just a very quick understanding, and this is our belief on the planning process. It begins with a lot of data gathering, as Whit Marsalis says, aggressive listening, trying to assess the school's culture, your programmatic needs, the campus and facilities. Then the team spends a lot of time analyzing and synthesizing this so that we can then together explore and ultimately select the best approach to develop your campus and to fully align it with your program. That then gets refined in the form of more refined costs and implementation, and then it's rolled out for you all to present to your community and to donors and to everyone else that will be interested in that. Through our planning process, we've developed some keys to success that Dennis and I would like to share with you.
Yeah, what you'll find today in this presentation is that there are several ways to go about completing a master plan, and these keys to success are just a few of them that we have seen in the past that have helped our clients be able to be successful. One is making sure that top down, that there's a full understanding of what the goal is of the master plan and complete buy-in. Before you can have complete understanding of the master plan, you should have a complete understanding of the current strategic plan. By the way, I say current, your strategic plan should be current, so that the vision that you're outlining or laying out to the master planning architect is a current vision. This is also important when you talk about the existing facilities and understanding where they are at as far as condition and how those existing facilities are serving the mission of the school and the pedagogy. You all want to do this with either understanding, is this going to be internal, or do I have the resources? And if you don't have the resources and team members, being able to go out and backfill those individuals. Peter, I'll pass some of these others off to you.
Thank you. Well, just for everyone to understand, I think the goal for a master plan it's not an end to itself. It's a means to future campus development. To that end, it really needs to be an actionable, implementable master plan. And things like making sure that trustees are participating, that your leadership group are the right people to make those decisions, sort of to be the deciders, as they say. And most importantly for us, it's really to understand what the fundraising expectations will be, so that the plan that's being developed is realistic and achievable, and perhaps with a slight reach, but not so ambitious that it just sits there on the table and gathers dust. That we really want to make sure that it is an actionable plan. And then the last two being really very important for folks, that this is a macro level conversation, and there's a great tendency to say, well, where's my classroom? Where's my closet? Where's the locker rooms, or, what type of lockers? And that this is a macro level conversation. And we often are asked how long these take. I promise you the real time driver will be you all, in that you're going to need time to make those decisions and not rush very, very important strategic and financial decisions. So allow yourselves time.
Thing I would add, even more importantly, is that you shouldn't think of it in terms of a linear timeline. The master plan is an ongoing living document. So it needs to be able to be allowed to have pauses and stops and be really fluid to be able to make decisions.
So in a moment, you're going to hear from two school leaders from two different schools who have both executed campus plans, and I and my team were fortunate to work with both of them. But I think you'll hear two different stories, neither one good or bad, just different approaches, and in particular with a focus on who the right team members are, in addition to the internal team and the architect or planners, sort of the position on whether or not having an owner's rep or program manager present will be brought up by both of these. So we'll quickly jump to some introductions now. I'm Peter Weinbrenner. I'm a principal with the firm of Hord, Coplan, Macht, and I have the pleasure of leading our K-12 practice on the East Coast. And I've spent my entire career planning, designing independent schools. I actually grew up in the campus of a private school, myself a boarding school. And so to say that this is in my blood would be not a far reach. Deborah?
Thank you, Peter. I'm Deborah Anderson, and I've been at Foxcroft School for 12 years now. My background is corporate America, a lot of real estate management. So you'll learn as the conference goes on why I played the role that I played in our campus master plan. I too, it's in the blood. I was born and raised on a boarding school. My father was director of plant, and my mother was a business officer. So you can see it's ingrained in myself as well. So Karl.
Thank you, Deborah. I'm Karl Sjolund. This is my 6th year as the head at St. Andrew Sewanee School in Sewanee, Tennessee. I also spent 9 years as the head at Salem Academy in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And prior to that, I spent 20 years at Virginia Episcopal School, boarding school in Lynchburg, Virginia. And I was fortunate to do a lot of different jobs. The one job I never did was physical plan. And so that was one of the areas that I had probably the least experience in, and you'll learn about that in just a moment.
Well, thanks, Karl. And I'm Dennis Palmer, the Senior Vice President and COO, and one of the partners of Building Solutions. We're a technical advisory firm, but in particular, we are probably the premier firm in the K-12 independent school space. Some of the things we do are facility assessments. That's usually when our engagements start, and having a complete understanding of existing facilities and working with boards and BNGs to be able to create a plan. Then that often leads us into being a PM or project leader on other projects that come out of those recommendations out of the facility assessment. We're a 30-year-old firm, and we work in about 38 states. And we just really want to be clear. You can see, I'm not going to read these verbatim, but you can see that we have learning objectives, And really, one of the things we want to make sure is that there's a complete understanding of the process of a master plan. And when I say master, a complete comprehensive master plan, and knowing that there is some templates out there, but that process is fully customizable. Then recognizing the roles that the individuals that are leading this process internally, which are at the school, and also the roles of the team that you bring on board if you do bring on a comprehensive team. And then just making sure that there's an involvement of people outside of the people that are leading the master plan. These could be anywhere as far as having parents or students. You can have some technical guidance within different departments of the campus, but when you talk about having a full comprehensive master plan, that involves a lot of constituents. So you've heard us talk about these two different approaches to master plan, and as you heard from Karl and Deborah and Peter, the thing we're going to be talking about today is there's no right and wrong approach. It's really just understanding the skill set and the resources you have internally, and being really honest with yourself about what you need to either fill the gaps on or bring on to make this a success. The story that you're going to hear in a little bit from Foxcroft is they took the approach because they had special skills internally, and you'll hear more about those skills that Deborah has. But they were able to come about doing the master plan with more internal support. So I'll pass it over to you, Deborah.
Thank you, Dennis. As Dennis said, we do bring in our roles very different skill sets, and mine happens to be, I've got a lot of property management. So this was very unexpected. When I joined Foxcroft is over 100 years old. They did not really have a strong mission statement, nor did they have a strategic plan or a campus master plan. So when I walked in, basically the entire plant, 50 buildings on 500 acres, was being held together with bubble gum and duct tape. So I had a lot on my plate when I first arrived, but I stepped back because there was talk at the board level about doing a strategic plan, about potentially improving some of our plant. Knowingly, immediately, unless we really had our arms around what we owned, the condition in which it was in, and having a strategic plan that supported the campus master plan, they work in tandem, was crucial. So I spent a lot of time understanding our mission and our promises to our families and to our students. And it really boils down to the 3 Ps, and that's the people, it's the program, and plant. And the plant is the foundation, right? So it really took a lot of investigation on my part. I engaged all of our stakeholders with the aid of Peter at HCM to find out what was important to them as we went through this process of a campus master plan. While we were doing that, I was also using our facilities department to really assess what our buildings were about. What were the conditions? Where were the needs? How old were various mechanical systems? What was the priority from a physical plant standpoint, not a program standpoint, but a plant standpoint, prioritizing fire, life, and safety repairs. So we needed a jumping off point. We engaged in, with Peter's help, a firm that did MEP evaluation, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing evaluation of all of our buildings. We were able to assign age to those items. We also happened to run our own wastewater treatment plant and our water. So it really was a big undertaking, and it took a lot of people to gather all of that information. We also engaged in a landscape analysis. You can imagine over the years, people's tendencies was to put in things that were specific to them and not looking at the overall plan for the campus. So we did a lot of data gathering before we could even engage in a thoughtful campus master plan. So we were fortunate that our head, she's not new anymore, but when she came on board, she was all about the strategic plan. I was all about the campus master plan, and we dovetailed those. But what we did is we went ahead and we brought in Peter early on. So he was learning the mission and the promises. He was understanding the goals of the board for the strategic plan and looking at our plant. Next slide. So as we went through this, there was a lot of things that we were evaluating, and it was trying to dovetail the needs with construction logistics so that when we were able to get donations, because it was all dependent on our donations, how would we phase these in so that whether it was a new building, it was a building of improvements, what exactly would be the order in which these things would take place? So on the right is an example of a project that we have just begun to embark on. We worked with our board, we worked with our institutional advancement because donations are key to successfully executing this. We work with Peter, and we also brought on our construction firm. So we did a pre-construction contract so that we could look at logistically how would this roll out so that we did not impact the students and the program. And one of the things that came to light very quickly was our board said, absolutely no trailers. We don't want any trailers on campus. You have to do this and be creative to figure out how that happens. Peter, myself, our head of school, and the construction company sat, looked at all the pieces to this particular improvement and said, this is how it needs to be laid out. So from this picture, 1B, 2, 3 are all brand new buildings and site work. 4, 5, and 6 and 1A were existing. So how do we do that? So we worked with our constituencies, our key stakeholders, to get everybody's buy-in so that we could dictate to institutional advancement. Because while donors are wonderful, they also have their preference, and they can derail a project very quickly if you don't keep it in control. So that is how we approached our campus master plan. And we have now are looking at possibly doing another one that will incorporate some of the stuff that we did from the 2016 campus master plan. Next slide, please. So the takeaways for me, and I would surely hope that everybody takes the time to really understand the physical plant. Again, I said, and I can't say it enough, it is the foundation to what we are delivering to our families and our students. Solid data collection. Don't sugarcoat it. If there are mechanicals that are just not in good working order, don't think you can nurse them and that there'll be longevity there. You're only going to impact the entire program. So get solid data, really understand. And yes, at the end of the day, it probably will be a large ticket item when it's all said and done, but nothing happens overnight. Things take time. Our schools grow and evolve over time. Again, know and engage your architect early, really important. They need to understand the mission. They need to understand your campus. They need to understand those sacred things that can't be touched, and we all have them on our campuses, and those that are up for grabs that can be rethought of or reimagined, that would help today's teaching. Engage those key stakeholders. One of the reasons we've been so successful throughout all of our processes, whether it's the new building or it is a renovation, I involve the community right down to the students. We involve them in our construction. We involve the teachers in our construction. It's nothing worse to be doing a construction project and people don't understand why they have to change their foot pattern because this project is going on. We want them excited. We want them to be a part of that. Engage in pre-construction with a contractor. If you're lucky enough to find a contractor you are comfortable with that knows your campus, engage them early. Spend that little extra money so that they can help you say, you know, if you do this, this is going to happen, or you're going to incur this for the infrastructure. Things of that nature. The earlier you start, you can sort of think about the whole process so that you're not throwing good money after bad. You're thinking about the end game, and make sure you have time. I have a really strong accounting department. I've got a really strong plant department that gives me the time to spend with the architects, to spend with the pre-construction, because you yourself could derail and create more cost if you're not timely responding to the needs of the architect and pre-construction, especially if you get to the point that you are actually under contract, ready to begin a project. So why did I decide to be a owner's rep or a program manager? One, it's in my blood. That's some of it. But I didn't come to Foxcroft knowingly that that was going to be what I was going to do. It just so happened they were just beginning to engage in these talks. Ultimately, it saved the school a lot of money. The third parties sometimes are costly, and we were on a really tight budget. We were barely able to make year to year balance our budget. So that was critical to our success. I'm on site daily. I see what is happening. So to me, that was a positive to be here, to watch what is happening, to integrate our school maintenance team from the beginning. It's difficult to build a building and then turn it over to the existing staff and say, okay, now it's your baby to take care of. So this helped us decide if I had the right talent to manage a new building or to manage new systems. We have found over time that we have specialty positions in our maintenance department because buildings are becoming more sophisticated. And then also with me being on site, there's some back issues that maybe a third party wouldn't know. So a perfect example, we just redid a wonderful little building into a music building that 8 years ago had an oil leak. And when we started to do work for the sump pump, that residual oil showed up again. Everybody panicked, but because I knew what had happened 8 years earlier, we were able to mitigate it, move forward, contact the right people so that it didn't hold up the project. So those are some of the reasons why I did, and we chose to do it in-house versus an outside firm. But I can't highlight enough, make sure you have the time and make sure you have the interest. Not everybody is interested in plant. Plant is I love plant and I wouldn't do my job without it, but it's really important you have those two things. So thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. I had the unique privilege of having worked with both these schools and both of these leaders, and having worked at a lot of other schools, 30-some schools over the years. Foxcroft is unique in that they have a Deborah. Most schools don't have that plant savvy business manager who, maybe she even missed her calling of being a program plant manager. She's an excellent business manager. So when we were invited to explore St. Andrews Sewanee by Dennis and his team, and Karl will tell you this story in a moment about this whole process, they did realize the value and the need for a program manager owner's rep like Building Solutions, and the process that they led the school through, and including the selection of our team, was important. I often think of the roles that people play in any of these projects, but in particular campus planning. You've all heard the term of, staying in your lane and making sure that you have the right lanes identified. And I think in the case of St. Andrews Sewanee, we all did an excellent job of staying in our lanes, the owner, the architect planner, and the owner's rep or program manager. In Foxcroft, I think, we all did a great job too, but some of us sometimes moved in a couple of lanes in parallel, Deborah being one of those people. And if you have the stomach and the wherewithal for that, that's great. But, if not, then there are certainly other solutions. So I'm going to hand it over to Karl to tell the wonderful story of St. Andrews Sewanee, which is next to Foxcroft, or hand in hand with Foxcroft, quite possibly one of the most stunning settings I've ever had the privilege to work on. And Karl, I can't wait to come back and see you guys soon, but so take it away.
Great. Thank you, Peter. When I arrived on the SAS campus in 2016, one of the first documents actually that was given to me was a facility audit that had been done by Building Solutions just a few years before I got here. And the purpose of the audit was to address some of our deferred maintenance backlog. It's something we had not done any work on prior to them coming in and spending time on our campus. And then also prioritizing and planning for the future, which of course, that audit became a pretty important piece of the preliminary campus master planning work. Well, late in my first year as head, there hadn't been a lot of conversation about a campus master plan at that point, but we were given a wonderful gift, a $5 million gift for our endowment. But part of that gift was an expectation that we would raise an additional $10 million that would go to capital projects. But we didn't know exactly what capital projects we were going to prioritize, and we were given a limited amount of time to raise that $10 million. So we needed a master campus plan to help prioritize those projects. And so we knew a lot about our current buildings, thanks to the work that Building Solutions had done for us. But we had never, or at least none of the folks that were there on campus had done very much in the way of campus master planning at all. And so I would never recommend that you rush into a campus master planning process like we did, unless, of course, somebody gives you $5 million and says, this is what you need to go do. And so, it was what it was. And so we were determined to find out what those pressing projects were going to be and how we prioritize them. But as I was sort of thinking through it with the board, it became clear to me that in the same way that I wouldn't go into court without an attorney, it didn't make sense to go into this process without somebody helping us to navigate it. And we didn't have the good fortune of having somebody like Deborah on our team. And so we needed somebody to walk us through it step by step. And it became pretty clear that we ought to reach out to the folks at Building Solutions. They know more about our campus than we do, certainly more than I do. And let's see if they have some idea of how to go through this process. Well, we were pleased to find out when we reached out to them that this is something that they do for a lot of their clients. And so it's just part of their business plan. Go ahead and change the slide. So we went ahead, we hired Building Solutions, and the point was we wanted them to organize and orchestrate, first of all, the selection of the master planner. They started with helping us write the RFP. In fact, they pretty much wrote the RFP for us with a lot of our input. And the reason they were able to do that is because they already knew us. They already understood who we were. They understood our mission. They understood the ethos of the place. And so when you build that RFP, all of that has to be integrated into that document so that when you're reaching out, you really know what you're looking for. So they helped us with the RFP. Then they found 8 different firms to put that RFP out to. And they had identified firms that they thought would work well with our school and firms that had done this particular type of work in the past. And that was something, again, we had no knowledge of. We probably could have taken some time to sort of figure it out, but we didn't have anybody that was capable of doing that on our campus. And so it made sense that, hold on, I'm going to stop for a second. My alarm's going off. I'm sorry. I don't know what that was about. I'm sure I'm supposed to be somewhere. Okay. Coming back. All right. They put the RFP out and they found us 8 different firms that they were able to identify that were known for this particular type of work or running these kinds of projects. And that was really important to us because we didn't know, we would have no way of identifying which firms were really good at this and which firms were not. And we didn't have anybody that really had the bandwidth to find that, to do that kind of research. They organized and managed the original site visits. We had 7 of the 8 firms came to our campus, and they organized the site visits for those firms who were bidding on the project. And of course, they came to the site so they could gather information so they could go back and work on their bids. And then Building Solutions went over the bids once they came in, helped us understand what was in the bids and what was not in the bids that should have been in the bids. Something, again, that we wouldn't have had a lot of experience with. And then we started the interview process. They met us in Nashville, and all the firms that decided to ultimately go through that full process and go through the interview process that we decided to interview. They helped us to determine what kind of questions we want to ask. And many of those questions were questions, again, that we didn't know that we needed to ask, and they helped us figure out what those were and then decipher the answers to make sure that we were hearing what we needed to hear. They knew what was being said and what wasn't being said, and they knew how to follow up with additional questions to make sure that we were getting what we were getting. And then they were able to score each of the firms, and they checked the credentials of the folks in those firms to make sure that the firms were actually committing the A team to work with us on the project, and that A team that they were committing to work with us was a group of individuals that had actually done some work together. So they were able to do some of that investigating to make sure that we were getting the best that firm had to offer. And the bottom line was we did end up with the A team from HCM. And of course, we got Peter Weinbrenner, which we knew at that point that we got the rock star, and so we were thrilled with that process. And all of that was the preliminary stuff that, if we had not done that well, then who knows who we would have ended up with, and who knows how much longer it would have taken us to go through that process, because it would have had to have been an add-on for anybody on our campus. And then Building Solutions stuck by us throughout the actual master campus planning process. They participated in the charrettes. They assisted us in the phasing methodology that I know Deborah was talking about. They provided conceptual cost estimates for us. They served as an advocate from the beginning and all throughout, and they made sure, again, that we were asking the right questions and getting the right answers. So all of this to say that if you don't have someone on your campus like Deborah that is capable of managing this process, and I would say that's a big ask for somebody on your campus, and they also, of course, have to have the bandwidth. Then I use the attorney analogy that I wouldn't go in the courtroom, but probably a better analogy is, if you were going to buy a used car and you only buy a used car once every few years, and you don't know a whole lot about being a mechanic and checking out that used car to make sure it's what it needs to be. I'd say if you got a brother-in-law who's a mechanic, you ought to take him to help you buy the used car. And so Building Solutions was, I kind of think of him as a brother-in-law. So that's our story at SAS.
Oh, well, I'm just glad that both of you got to share your stories, Karl, and I also appreciate you, Deborah, even though we haven't got to work together. I think it's very, very important for people in your shoes to understand that this process is very dynamic, and we see hundreds, dare I say, thousands of K through 12 independent school campuses, and they're all unique, and it's not a one size fits all. So you really need to know who you are and what the goal and the mission is. With that said, here at Building Solutions, we believe that there's 3 documents that are very important in this whole goal of keeping the mission of the school and staying true to the level of standard of pedagogy and just forward thinking aligned. And I know most schools, when I talk about strategic plan and the work that's put in place to keep that current, that's pretty regularly known terminology, and it isn't as exotic. And most schools that we see, the leadership is on some sort of plan of keeping that current every 3 to 5 years. When we talk about master plans, I think some schools understand master plans. We see that schools often aren't doing what we would consider a comprehensive master plan. It's sort of like the story that Karl just mentioned. Somebody has a pretty large sum of money and they want you to quickly come up with a plan, and you quickly produce that plan so you can quickly use that money. So sometimes to do a full comprehensive, most of the times to do a full comprehensive master plan, it takes time to understand who you are and where you're trying to go. One piece that we often find or scratch our heads that isn't included is a comprehensive understanding of the existing facilities. You've heard both of our team members talk about how they were intimately tied into the campus, the existing campus. One was connected in a way of being there themselves and had been seasoned enough to know the ins and outs of buildings and the people who are using the buildings, because it's not just about the buildings, it's the people using the buildings and the things that you can't see or behind walls. And you also heard a perspective of one that wasn't as intimately tied to the campus and used us to help bring them up to speed. However you go about that, having a comprehensive understanding of your existing asset and physical plant is very important. So we feel like the secret sauce is having all 3 of these components and keeping them current to guide you down the road of success. That being said, you see the images are paper binders, and we know that we're getting further and further away from paperback spines and everything is digitized and in the cloud. But the reason I put those up there is because no matter if it's paper or on a computer, this process is a milestone, but what you don't want it to be is a linear timeline of the beginning and a completion, because there should never be a completion. The campus is always evolving. You're always learning more about your constituents and the mission. You definitely have the DNA, but we, just like humans, we have our DNA, but as we age and grow, we learn and get interested and do more things. So the campus is organic. The people that are a part of the campus is organic. And I just want to put that message out there that this is important to know that the plan that you set in place are organic and they should always continue to be evaluated. And with that said, we will go ahead and take questions. We're excited to hear from you guys and are open to answering whatever you'd like to hear.